With the first rarities of the Infinite Forbidden cards being revealed, it's probably about time to talk about the set. And the first cards that we should probably talk about, that everybody already knows that are going to be crazy, are the Fiendsmiths. The first and most important Fiendsmith card is Fiendsmith Engraver. He has 3 effects. First of all, you can discard him to add any Fiendsmith spell trap from deck to your hand. You can target a Fiendsmith equipped card you control and a monster on the field, send them to the graveyard. That's really solid going second. And if it's in the graveyard, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra deck and special summon himself. Then Fiendsmith Requiem. First of all, it's a Link 1 monster, and we all know how fair and balanced Link 1 monsters are. You need one light fiend monster to summon him. His effect is basically Lonefire Blossom for Fiendsmith monster as a quick effect speed during the main phase. And he's also able to equip himself to a non-link light fiend monster you control, and the monster gains 600 ATK. This effect can be really nice, for example for Snake Eyes, because you have a free card to send to the graveyard, for example, for the original Sinful Spoils. Sequentia is the Link 2 monster of the archetype and needs 2 monsters including a light fiend monster. And the most important effect of the card is that you can fusion summon a fiend fusion monster from the extra deck by shuffling the materials from the graveyard into the deck. He's also able to equip himself to a monster, and the monster can't be targeted anymore. Then to the first fusion monster, and the first fusion monster is Lacrimosa. It has 3 effects. First of all monsters your opponent controls to 600 ATK, and that's probably gonna be relevant at one point. As a second effect, if he's fusion summoned, you can target a light fiend that's banished on your graveyard and either add it to your hand or special summon it. This is probably the most important effect of the card because it just gives you really easy access to rank 6 monsters like Grave King Caesar or Beatrice. And the third effect might not seem too strong at first glance, but it's really strong because of another card, and that's it. If it's sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle another light fiend monster from your graveyard into the deck or extra deck and inflict 1200 damage to your opponent. I mean, yeah. You will win in time with this. But the most important part of this effect is that it works really well with Angel of Blue Tears that you will send with Beatrice to the graveyard, and then you're just able to set any normal trap from your deck. So with the engine, basically any normal trap like D-Barrier is now searchable. Fiendsmith Dice Ira is basically the boss monster of the archetype. To summon him, you need the Fiendsmith and 2 light fiend monsters. His first effect is basically Hot Red for multiple monsters, basically up to the link rating of the link monster equipped with this card. And if you send to the graveyard, you can shuffle another light fiend monster from a graveyard into the deck or extra deck and target a card on the field and send it to the graveyard. Fiendsmith Tractors is by far the best Fiendsmith spell card, and it allows you to add any light fiend monster from your deck to your hand and then discard a card. So yeah, this is the reason why the Fabled Larry is money now. It also allows you to perform a fusion summon by banishing itself from the graveyard. And these two just exist. The next most anticipated archetype in the set is probably gonna be Gimmick Puppets, because who doesn't love FTKs? For speedrun of the cards. This card is basically Mathmech Circular as a normal summon. This card is basically Martha that can add herself back if she's sent to the graveyard. This card is just a basic extender for the deck. This card is basically an anime character. And this card is basically an anime character with another skin color. The field spell is Sanctum Summoning and just better. And this card probably won't see play because it's a trap and you want a FTK. But it's still really solid. Overall, Puppets didn't really perform too well over in the OCG, but for example, a deck like Great Raptor also didn't perform over there, so sometimes decks won't perform over there probably because of cards like Maxi, but over here they will perform decently well, so I still think that Gimmick Puppets will probably be a solid rogue deck. And you think about it in that way, it's basically like Tenpai, but just instead of OTKing, you want to FTK. And also like Tenpai, I think if you don't open the field spell, the deck will basically be fine to handle. Biggest difference is that Gimmick Puppets have a lot of old support that are all kinda bad, but some of the cards of the old support just are really annoying to deal with because they give you another layer of protection for the deck. There's also another archetype in the set that might see meta play, and that's Whitewoods. And the gimmick of the deck is sending spells and traps from your hand or field to the graveyard to trigger their effects, and this is also gonna trigger some other effects of your cards. The first monster is Asteria of the Whitewoods, and this card allows you to send any spell trap from your hand or field to the graveyard and then special a light spellcaster tuner from your deck. This is not even archetype locked, so it might see play in some other decks. And if a spell trap is sent to the graveyard to activate a monster effect and she's in the graveyard, you can special summon her. This set allows her to special summon herself from your hand by sending a spell trap from your hand or field to the graveyard and then add a Whitewood monster from your deck to your hand. Also, if a light spellcaster tuner monster is special summoned to your field during your opponent's turn, you can add herself from the graveyard back to your hand. Sylph is the next monster, and if she's normal summoned, you can add any Whitewood spell trap from your deck to your hand. And at a quick effect speed, if she's in the graveyard, you can target a Whitewood synchro monster that you control or that's in your graveyard, return it to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon this card. But her effects are negated. This effect can be really nice to dodge cards like Impim, for example. Arcia allows you to special summon herself from your hand if you control a Whitewood monster. And you can send a spell trap from your hand or field to the graveyard to draw a card. And also as a third effect, she has the second effect of Sylph. The first level 6 synchro of the deck, Arciella, is basically generic. She just needs a tuner and a non-tuner, and if she's special summoned you can send a spell trap from your hand or field to the graveyard, and then add a Whitewoods card or light spellcaster monster from your deck to your hand. Also she boosts your monster by 580k and gives them some protection. Silvera is another Synchro 6 monster for the deck, and if she's special summoned she's basically Book of Eclipse for your opponent. Also your monsters gain attack and deal piercing battle damage. Diabelle is a level 8 synchro monster for the archetype and is basically the boss monster of the archetype. She is also generic, and if she's synchro summoned using a tuner synchro monster as material, you can target a spell trap in your graveyard and add it back to your hand. And more important, if your opponent activates a card or effect, so basically like SP, you can use her effect and send a spell trap from your hand or field to the graveyard and special summon level 7 or lower tuner synchro monster from your extra deck, graveyard or banishment. Hell yeah, finally you can summon Shooting Riser Dragon again. But no, most of the times you'll probably summon the Silvera Synchro monster and use the effect to Book of Eclipse all monsters your opponent controls. Then there are also 3 spells. All the spells have the gimmick that if they are sent to the graveyard to activate a monster effect, you can set them again to the field. And Legend of the Whitewoods also allows you that if you control an illusion or spellcaster monster, to add a Whitewood monster from your deck to your hand. Beware the Whitewoods allows you to target a card your opponent controls and destroy it if you control level 6 or higher illusion or spellcaster monster. And the third spell of the archetype isn't a Whitewood spell, but a Sinful Spoil spell, and allows you to target illusion or spellcaster monster you control, return that face-up monster to the extra deck, and then spell summon one illusion or spellcaster monster from your graveyard or banishment. One thing that's really nice for Whitewoods is that it works well with other archetypes like for example Centurion that place themselves in the spell and trap zone. Also the toy cards from Battle of Legends work really well with this archetype. The last big archetype in the set is the Millennium archetype, and overall the archetype for this isn't too great, but there's still some decent cards that can be used generically, like for example the Caveman. Because the Caveman is basically a really good level 8 extender that you can play in any deck that wants a level 8 extender, and he allows you to search himself for the next turn again, basically like Fenrir. In theory you can also play more of the Millennium cards so the Caveman turns into 3 Link buddies, but those are soft breaks, so I think overall the Caveman's better card to play alone. And Exodia is getting a fusion. Cool. Light End and Dark End Dragon do get a new version as a main deck monster that can probably use in some way in Dragon Link, and Light and Darkness Dragon is getting a new fusion monster that's also kinda neat. Memento is getting 2 new cards that are both really solid and might actually put the deck into rogue territory. Tenpai is getting 3 new cards, and let's say their cards are pretty nice, because this card is basically Snake Eye Ash, this card is basically Poplar, and the trap card skips the main phase run of your opponent. The biggest issue with those cards is that Tenpai doesn't really want to see that many engine cards, because the hands with too many engine cards are the hands where you probably just lose. Madolche is also getting 3 new cards, and the new rank 5 is basically turning Tiramisu into a quick effect. Holy, my turtle fears this card. The Link 3 searches the Madolche monster on summon and basically allows you to special summon a Madolche monster from your hand. And the trap is basically double compulsory that summons a monster from your extra deck or hand. The support definitely seems solid, the only question is if it will be good enough to put it into rogue territory, but holy, a quick effect Tiramisu seems really solid. Centurion is also getting 2 new cards. The main deck monster is probably already solid just because it's another tuner name for the deck, but is also able to give you a draw on occasion. And the spell is basically just Karma Cut with an occasional Waking the Dragon-like effect. The thing that really scares me is that Rhydron is getting new support, because for God's sake, I hope that Rhydron won't be meta again. But the new ritual is definitely kinda solid, it's basically summon strike twice, and if it's destroyed you can float into another Rhydron ritual monster. And the new main deck monster basically special summons itself from hand or grave if you control another Rhydron monster, and on summon it serves a monster, so it's really solid. Another thing that scares me, because I'm European, is new Ragnaraka support, because they're getting 2 new cards. The main deck monster allows you to discard itself and special one of the 3 Ragnaraka types from your hand, and if it's banished during the end phase, you can draw cards up to the number of different Ragnaraka types you control. And the Link 3 is basically back removal when it's on the field, and if it's in the grave, you can put one of the Ragnaraka types from the field on the bottom of your deck and special summon it, and it locks you into the Ragnaraka types. It seems fine, but I have no clue about plants. Probably not the best though, because it's not a plant itself. One of the best generic cards in the set would probably Top Hat Hair the Silhouette Magician. First of all, it has the illusion protection, so it can't be destroyed by battle. If it's sync summoned, you're allowed to set a continuous trap from your deck that has an effect that special summons itself as a monster. And if a card in the spell and trap zone is special summoned to the monster zone, you can basically pop a spell and trap on the field. And one of the best targets for this will probably be the new trap monster, Silhouette, because this card is basically Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. Then there's also Azure Rune, and this card is basically Summon Warning, and if you're a Yugi Boomer, you can also set Metal Reflex Slam from your deck. The new Voices trap is really bad, but it also makes you able to die faster to Jubel. And then to the best generic card in the set, and that's Malchami. I mean, it's just a tuned down version of Maxi. And we all know how broken Maxi is, so a tuned down version of Maxi is still kinda nuts. The biggest differences in the effects are that you can only use Malchami if you control no cards, so you can't use the card if you're going first. It only works if your opponent special summon a monster from the hand, but it also works if your opponent's normal summoning a monster from the hand. So it also works against decks like Flu, and that's really nice. And there's also a drawback if you have way too many cards in your hand during the end phase, so it's a little bit worse with board breakers than it's with hand traps. But the worst part about this card is probably that it's a secret rare, and especially if you want to play it at Euros or the NAWCQ, the card will be immensely expensive. This Illusion Rank 4 monster just seems solid. I don't know, I think the card just reads really nicely. Shiver Take is nice Thunder Dragon support. I mean, Thunder Dragon probably won't do anything, but it's definitely nice to see this card now that Colossus is back in the TCG. The Dominus Purge is kind of a bad hand trap, but it's still a hand trap nonetheless, so at one point it might see play. There's a new Dark Magician and a new Mirror Force card for the Goldsark archetype that might be nice. Velmonica is also getting 2 new cards, and this card is only here because bad Light Fiend for the Fiendsmiths.